We'll go ahead and get started. Welcome, welcome. To anyone who has not been to a special interest discussion before, hi, I'm Casey. Today we're going to be talking to Joan Marie, Gayle, and Mel about the history of SidCity and the Social Club. And I am just going to let Joan Marie get started because there is a lot to cover right now. There's a couple decades. So, Joan Marie, the floor is yours.
Okay, let me get my screen share working here. And there we go. Okay, so in order to get to where we're going, we need to know where we've been. So I'm going to go way back, starting in the early 70s or late 60s. So how did we get here? First of all, when Star Trek fandom started back in the late 60s, technology was quite different. The picture that you see there is a mimeograph. There was a similar machine called a spirit duplicator. And what you could mainly used for, the smell, right? What they were mainly used for was to duplicate things because photocopiers were not available to the general public. And they were not something that you saw every day in offices. So if a teacher, they had them in schools because they had to duplicate tests, your teacher passed out paper tests. And then you can buy the equipment for the mimeograph at the office supply store. And yes, the correction fluid just stank to high heaven. I used to own a duplicator in the 1980s. I gave it up probably in the late 80s, but I did have a spirit duplicator for a while. You duplicate the pages, and you type up the pages on either the spirit duplicator original or on the mimeograph original. You attach it to the drum is inked, you turn the handle, and that puts the paper through, and you get the ink there. Early fanzines such as Spockanelia were done on mimeograph, and T-negative was done on spirit duplicator. You duplicated the pages, you collated them, and then you stapled them with, if they were thick, you did a heavy duty stapler, and you had to buy that. Photocopiers were expensive once they came up, and you could, go to a copy store and do it, and the page that they charged you by the page, just as they do now. And you type up the pages and bring them to the printer, but it was expensive. So a lot of people did fanzines with a mimeograph or a spirit duplicator first. Then they were mostly typed, but then computers came in. The first computers were expensive, $5,000, $10,000, something like that. I couldn't afford one. I didn't have a computer until the early personal computer until the early 90s. The first computer printers also were not very good. There was dot matrix, and there were a lot of people that said, I can't read dot matrix, do not ever send me anything in dot matrix. Then there was near letter quality, and sometimes people would take near letter quality and some wouldn't. And then there were finally laser printers, which were which were what we got today and much clearer. But we didn't get laser printers for a while, so we sort of had to muddle through with the technology that we had. So fanzine editors would do various things. They would mimeograph them, they would spirit duplicate them. If they had the money, they would go to a print shop and type them up and send it to the print shop for duplicating and collating, and sometimes even binding. But then the technology evolved, and by the time we got to multi-species medicine, I had a computer. I had elementary design software, Microsoft Publisher, a very early version. Scanners were expensive. Most photos were not digital. So what I did was I printed out pages to make multi-species medicine. I printed out pages with spaces for photos. I pasted the photos to the page, and I took them to the printer. Now, I did not take the 8.5 by 11 pages to the printer. What I did was that I pasted two 8.5 by 11 pages together to make 11 by 17. This saved on expense. Collation was expensive, so I took it home. I folded it. I collated it. I folded it, and I stapled it. Now, the stapler there is one I still have. I had to buy that stapler, and that is a stapler specifically to staple 11 by 17 pages in the middle. So if you happen to have some multi-species medicine issues around, you'll see that they are stapled in the middle. Except, sometimes Gayle did it, and then Gayle would just do 8.5 by 11 and staple them regularly. But if it was done by me, it was 11 by 17, and they were stapled and folded in the middle. The maximum membership of the Doctors Exchange, which is what we called Sin's Fan Club, was about 400. And that was a lot. That was a lot of newsletters. That was a lot of stapling and collating, and then you had to fold them over, and then you had to address them. Fortunately, Microsoft Word did address labels automatically, so I didn't have to type out address labels. Some fanzine editors actually typed out their address labels, even though they had hundreds of subscribers. But fortunately, Microsoft Word does address labels, so I didn't have to type them out individually. I just put the labels through the printer. Carol Reig and Sharon Monroe, who were local to me, after the lunch with the doctor in Minneapolis, Gayle enlisted them, thank you, Gayle, to help me. And it went much faster then. So every month, Carol Reig and Sharon Monroe would come to my house, and we would collate, staple, fold, stamp, and sort, because the international issues, the international ones for multi-species medicine, had to be mailed separately from the domestic ones, from the ones that for the US addresses. And then, of course, the ones that went overseas, who went outside the United States, not just overseas, outside of the United States, whether it was Canada, Mexico, or any place outside the United States, could not be folded over, stapled, and stamped. They had to be put in envelopes. So we had to put them in envelopes if they were outside the United States. And we had quite a few. We were proud of it. We had quite a few members outside the United States. It was wonderful. So we did that, and then we would drive down to the post office. Quite often, Carol Reig and I would drive down to the airport post office, which was the most efficient way to get them out, and drop them off there for mailing, because 400, that's quite a lot. And we put them in a box, and we bring them over to the thing, and we present them to the post office with the internationals on one side and the United States addresses on the other side, and then the post office would take care of it. So that is how multi-species medicine got published. Now, I put down Star Trek Lives here in the corner for a reason, and that is because back in the day, before the internet, and the internet was just getting started in the early to mid 90s, when Deep Space Nine was on, you pretty much had to know somebody to find fandom. But with the publication of Star Trek Lives, which is about 1975, Star Trek Lives sold hundreds of thousands of copies, which tells you how hungry Star Trek fans were for anything Star Trek and how many were out there. So people who were in like a small town who didn't know any Star Trek fan suddenly found out there were lots of Star Trek fans and how to connect with them. And one of the ways they connected with them was through the Star Trek Wall Committee, with which I was a member. And the address was in Star Trek Lives, and many people wrote, and our letters were collected through a central mailroom. The mailroom sent them out to the members in order to answer, and about once a month, or if we had high mail volume, maybe even twice a month, I get a stack of 20 letters from the mailroom to answer, and I'd sit down at my typewriter and type out the responses. And that's how people found out about other people who knew about fandom. So it was a network. Now, one of the things that brought people together was conventions. And conventions were pretty much publicized. I mean, the New York Star Trek convention, because of its sheer volume, got a lot of publicity. And so for the early 70s, there were two major Star Trek conventions. There was the New York Star Trek convention, and then there was in California EquiCon, which was run by the Trimbles. So those are the two major Star Trek conventions. Now I was and am in the Minneapolis area, so traveling out to the coast wasn't really in my means. But then in the Midwest, the Michigan fans got together and put together something called the Detroit Triple Fan Fair, which was my first convention. And triple meant comic books, Star Trek, and science fiction. And since I was interested in all three, I went. And so these early conventions were modeled on science fiction conventions. And they were generally run by people who were active in science fiction fandom and who had run science fiction conventions. So these were experienced convention runners. So the New York and the Trimbles had been in science fiction fandom running conventions for a long time. The New York group was science fiction, and the Detroit group was. So how did they work? You paid a fee to get in, and that gave you access to everything. The guests were paid once for an appearance, but there was no paid seating. It was first come, first served seating. There was no extra payment for autographs or photos, and guests mingled freely with fans when they were not speaking. Now, the photos of George Takei here are rather small, but you can see he's just standing out there with nobody touching him. I mean, we were so in awe. We Star Trek fans were so in awe of the actors. We didn't bother them very much. And so they just wandered around just freely, and fans would come up to them. Here's some fans coming up to George and asking for an autograph, and he's giving an autograph. Of course, he had a speaking engagement too. There were times when each of the actors would speak, but when they were not speaking, they were just going around and mingling with fans. And this is how I got into this phenomenon was the reason that I was able at my first Detroit Triple Fan Fair to have an elevator all to myself with Gene and Majel. It was just me and Gene and Majel in the elevator. And I didn't waste my opportunity. I had a Bijo Star Trek concordance in my hand, and I gave it to them for autograph. They both autographed it and gave it back to me in the elevator. The thing you see down here is a meet and greet. And just for historical purposes, you can see that there were very few non-smoking laws, so Majel didn't hesitate at all to smoke. But there were meet and greets, and I think the person with the back of us is, if I recall correctly, my memory may be fuzzy on this, but I think that's David Gerald talking to Major. But this was a meet and greet, and if you paid for your attendance, you didn't have to do a special fee or anything special or anything. If you had a convention badge, you could go in to the meet and greet and talk with the actors. It was just mingling. And this is a later convention. This is in the 90s. This is Leonard Nimoy. And again, no special seating fees, no special autograph fees. If you paid to get in the convention, you could go up to the autograph line, get an autograph, get a picture taken. Here's Harv Bennett getting a picture taken with a fan in the 80s. Here's Jimmy Doohan, very friendly with fans, signing autographs. Here's Dee Kelly, again, just wandering through the convention halls, and a fan approached him and asked for an autograph. And so he's signing an autograph. This was usual. This was the usual thing. This is Christopher Reeve, who had just done Superman and appeared at the World Science Fiction Convention in 1979, which I was at. And again, no paid seating, no special thing. If you had a convention badge, you could go to the autograph table and get your autograph from Christopher Reeve. Just line up and do it. And it was very simple. And this on the corner here, this is Mark Leonard. Again, he was no special fee, nothing special. I took his picture with my Polaroid camera and handed him the Polaroid thing and said, would you please sign it? And he did. And that's how I got signed. But no extra fee, no nothing. No nothing. So I just, this changed. I think that's it. In the mid-70s, okay, and then things changed, but I'll get to that in a minute. In the mid-70s was the start of the conventions for fan fiction writers, editors, publishers, and readers. There were no celebrity guests, but there were panel discussions, art shows, costume competitions, and lots of room parties, which were fun. The first was RequestCon, then SequesterCon, then SequesterCon 2, then Most Eastly, and then the Media West Cons through the 80s, and up until pretty much recently. This is me in my, at the costume competition. I didn't enter, I just wore this around. This was my science officer's original Trek uniform. Now they have ribbons at conventions where you hang ribbons onto your convention badge, but then badges were the thing. And this is my bulletin board full of badges. And this is a special badge done for me by Phil Folio, who's a famous artist, who is still a famous artist. At that time, he was a famous fan artist, just turning pro. And he made this for me. And you can see a couple of things. First of all, you can tell it was not done by me because it says Joan Verba and not Joan Marie Verba. The same with the Well Committee badge. You can see it was not done by me because it says Joan Verba and not Joan Marie Verba. I'm not particularly fussy about that, but if it's done by me, it generally says Joan Marie Verba. Now, a Trekker, but a nice person anyway. What's behind that? Okay, let me tell you. Star Trek fans were not looked upon with great affection by the established science fiction community. Now, I was both a science fiction fan and a Star Trek fan, and I was involved in most. I was a member of the Minnesota Science Fiction Society. I signed their charter. I signed their nonprofit organization founding papers. I was pretty much a very active member until the mid-'80s, from the early '70s to the mid-'80s. So I was a science fiction fan, and I went to both science fiction conventions and Star Trek conventions. But science fiction fans at the time were not, they saw Star Trek fans as invaders who wanted to take over and make all science fiction Star Trek, which was stupid. It never happened. It never was going to happen. But, you know, there was this thing. So, so sometimes at science fiction conventions, it was there's a little friction. Let's put it that way. At the World Science Fiction Convention that I went to in Washington, D.C., Jacqueline Lichtenberg and Laura Basta were nominated for the Hugo Award in the Best Fan Writer category on the basis of their Star Trek fan fiction. This was a scandal. And there are many science fiction fans there who were scandalized that they were even nominated. They didn't win. Susan Wood won. And she deserved it. She was a good fan writer. But Jacqueline and Laura got enough votes to get on the ballot, and they're good writers too. So I think they deserve to be on the ballot. But after that, the Hugo Committee took a definite effort to make sure that no fan fiction would ever get on the Hugo ballot ever again. So they changed the rules. Now, this is why a couple of years ago, when the Archive of Our Own won the Hugo, that was so significant, because that tells you what a sea change there has been in attitudes from the mid-'70s to the 2010s and 2020s. Because right now, most science fiction fans know about Star Trek, watch Star Trek, are familiar with Star Trek, and don't care whether the science fiction fans coming to the convention are like Star Trek or Star Wars or Stargate or anything else. But at the time, there was a little friction. Now, a couple of other things. TrekLink here, this was my first fanzine, and it was actually a newsletter. This was a fanzine that was strictly for reviewing of other fanzines. And I got fabulous cover artwork, as you can see. Star Trek artists would send me wonderful fan art to put on the cover. It was wonderful. So I did. It was just great. And then in the middle here, finding a local group of Star Trek fans eluded me for a while. I mean, I knew Ruth Berman, but I didn't know too many Star Trek fans locally until the early 80s, when this is Carol Reed, who helped me with the fanzine. This is Kay Brown, and this is Marilyn Johansson, now Marilyn Victor, whose house we were at the time the picture was taken. And they ran a fanzine called the name eludes me, but they run a Star Trek fanzine. They found me and I found them because Kay's husband worked in the same office as I did. I was a computer programmer at the time. And so I found them, and then Cynthia Levine, the late Cynthia Levine, was a Star Trek fan who moved from New York to Minneapolis for her job. She had a Star Trek fanzine, and the rest of these fans, this is me, and the rest of the fans, I'm blanking out on their names, but it was nice to have a local Star Trek group. And so this early 80s Star Trek group was a local Star Trek fan group, and we had get-togethers and collating parties and things like that, which was wonderful. Okay, so here we go. In the mid-70s, at the start of the professional conventions, starting with the Star Trek Spectacular, this was mocked by fans of the time. It was, because science fiction conventions were non-profit. And the first Star Trek conventions were non-profit. Aquacon in New York, they weren't profitable. They weren't made for a profit. They were there for gathering fans. But the Chicago Star Trek Spectacular was the first professional Star Trek con. And this was widely mocked because you didn't have a convention to earn money. You didn't do that. But on the other hand, it started a trend. First, fans wanted a convention in their hometown. A frequent question in the Star Trek Well Committee mail. I couldn't count the number of letters I got saying, why isn't there a Star Trek convention in my hometown? And I kept having to tell them, these aren't professional conventions. They are amateur conventions, and you have to have a local group who's knowledgeable to put them on in order to have it in your town. Well, the professional conventions did go from town to town, and so people were able to go to a Star Trek convention in their town. So that was an advantage of the professional conventions. But at the time, it was just unthinkable that you would have a convention for profit and try to make money off of it. And I remember that someone actually did a fanzine mocking the Star Trek Spectacular, because they mocked the fact that this was for profit, because you weren't supposed to do that. But now it's you know, there are fan runs conventions, but there aren't very many of them. So now, at the same time, while you started the professional conventions, while the first Star Trek conventions were run by fans who knew what they were doing, Star Trek conventions started cropping up, but run by those with little or no convention experience. Oh, let's put on a convention. We don't know anything about conventions, but let's put one on. Then disasters happened because of that. Actors weren't paid, and the ultimate fantasy, known as the Con of Wrath, which presumably was in Texas, not only did not pay the actors, they did not pay the hotel, so that people came to the convention and there weren't any rooms for them. People were being thrown out of their rooms. The actors didn't know what to do. The only place that they were paid for, that they could use, was the convention center. So they actually still had meetings, and Harv Bennett pretty much organized the actors and organized the things so that the fans would still have something to go to, and the local fans took the visiting fans in, which was nice. But it was a complete disaster. So actors' fees, so as a result of these disasters, actors' fees went up and actors demanded payment in advance. And who can blame them? So there were still fan runs conventions, but they were fewer and fewer in numbers, and actors would only appear if they trusted those who ran them and were paid in advance. And this resulted in the convention experience today. It's relevant to note that there are still fan-run Star Trek or general media conventions Convergence and MarsCon in Minnesota, Shore Leave in Maryland, yeah, but there are not a lot of them. Now I've got a picture of some things. This is a Tribble exhibit at a convention. And this is a convergence panel, which I was at. There I am. And since I can't travel anymore, I'm only going to the local conventions. So Convergence is the largest media fan-run convention in the Minneapolis area, and they get upwards of $5,000 fans every year. It's a big convention. Very nice. But there aren't many of them now. Okay, so now we're back into the Doctors Exchange. This is a little bit of a repeat from what I did at one of the SidCity Social Club meetings, so I'll go through this really quickly. When Star Trek Deep Space Nine started, I fell in love with the Bashir character immediately and thought, you know, does this actor have a fan club? How can I approach him without seeming to be a stalker? What should I do? So I started looking around, you know, mining my contacts, looking around for fanzines that were dedicated to Bashir. And this is what I found. The Doctor's Journal ran 3 issues and then pretty much stopped. Medical Log by Angela Jones ran about three issues and then stopped. And by that time, I more or less picked it up. We more or less picked it up. I got together with Gayle. Gayle had a link with Sid, and so we were able to start the Doctors Exchange. So we had that, and then we have multi-species medicine. Okay, here's the first issue, and we tried to be a full-service fan club and have many things available for people who were in our fan club. So you get multi-species medicine, you get a nice membership certificate, you get a nice picture of Sid. We also had some paid extras like the calendar. We had a calendar, and then Gayle did some extra issues. Some of these are Gayle's. We had a membership directory that was with the membership, and this is another. We had a membership booklet, and that went with the membership. So we had lots and lots of things for people who belong to the club. And, you know, we wanted this to be a full service club and a nice experience for everybody. And so that's when we, you know, did the Lunch with the Doctor. We decided that we would, you know, have get-togethers for fans, just for the fans. And so here's the first Lunch with the Doctor. Here is Sid, who had just autographed something of mine. And of course, I am thrilled because this is the first time I had seen Sid face to face. I was just thrilled. And so this was the first Lunch with the Doctor in Arizona. And this is this was probably a weekend on a promenade. And these are the table decorations that I did for the Minneapolis Lunch with the Doctor for Sid. And we auctioned them off for charity. And and then Sid signed some. You can see the signature. This is somebody else's. Somebody asked me after the last presentation, did I have one for myself? I certainly did. I made this Armand Bashir doll just for me. And I sewed an extra one with the racquetball uniform, just for me. We also had t-shirts. And Janet Darrow is a fantastic fan artist, and she not only did artwork for multi-species medicine, she also did covers for our program books, because we had program books, and we had name badges so that people could network and meet each other and get to know each other and talk to each other. And we also had, you know, and so she did the artwork for the t-shirts, the program books, for the papers and everything. This is something that I don't know who did this, but I was glad that they did. This was a special issue from the post office for Weekend on the Promenade, and I got the actors to autograph it. So this is my copy and autograph it. Oh yes, the Lincolns. Yes, the Lincolns were one of the Weekend of the Promenades. The National Association of Lincoln Impersonators had their convention at the same time in the same place. So over the Weekend on the Promenade, we were always passing people who looked like Lincoln or Mary Lincoln or, you know, whatever. So we had that. Okay. So, here are some Weekend on the Promenades. Renee, whenever he signed something, he often did a little something extra. So this is his autograph of his picture with me, and he put this in. I have other autographs with him where he put in something extra. He would do that. That was really nice of him. This is an extra. This is Armin Shimmerman, a picture with me, and he autographed it. And then multi-species medicine ended, Deep Space Nine ended, and the club, the Doctors Exchange ended, but then it transferred to Far Beyond the Stars, which Carol Reed took over. And this was my membership certificate for Far Beyond the Stars. And she published many, many issues of the newsletter. She edited the newsletter and published it for many, many years. And until the end of that one. So this is how it went. And so this is how it was. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, we can go on to whoever is next.
That was great, Joan Marie. Thank you so much. How did your sort of relationship with the fan club change after Deep Space Nine ended? Did you stay in the Star Trek, sort of in the Star Trek sphere?
Oh, I am always in the Star Trek sphere. I am always in the Star Trek sphere. Yes, I was a member. This is my membership certificate. I was a member of Far Beyond the Stars.
Gotcha. So that continued on.
So that continued on.
Gotcha.
I mean, no, I am constantly in touch with Star Trek fans all over the place. This is the case now. This has always been the case in the past. This is I hope always will be the case in the future. I am always in touch with Star Trek fans. I have never dropped out of Star Trek fandom. I have always been a Star Trek fan, always will be, good Lord willing. And so it's a continuing thing.
That is fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions for Joan specifically? Anyone?
I have a question.
Sure.
So you were talking about how conventions used to be different in terms of you could have a lot more interaction with, the actors, and you didn't have to pay for stuff, which is actually more what I'm used to in the world of anime conventions. We don't usually have a lot of added fees. And I was wondering when you would say that changed and why. Was it more gradual or more abrupt? What would you say is like how conventions have changed over the years that you've been in fandom?
I did cover that earlier, but just to be brief, it's sort of the transition happened after the transition happened because of two things. First of all, first professional Star Trek conventions, when the professionals got into it and decided that they could run a convention for profit, and so they started to charge for everything because they wanted to make a profit. The other thing was that the fan-run conventions, some of the fan-run conventions were being organized and run by people who did not know how to run a convention, did not know how to be experienced, just woke up one day and said, I want to run a convention, let's get together and do it. And just were complete disasters, and the actors didn't want to come, and they just decided that, unless we trust the guys who are running the convention, we really aren't into it. So that's pretty much how it changed. And it changed pretty much in late 70s, early 80s. That's pretty much when the transition took place.
Yeah, on that note, I was curious. I think a difference with anime is we still largely have stuff that's fan run, even the big stuff. But on that note, I was curious if you heard of the infamous Tumblr convention from a few years ago, DashCon. That was sort of like one of the really epic stories of horribly run fan conventions. But I won't recoup the whole story. You can look it up on the internet. But it's a doozy.
It is indeed. But anyone else? Questions for Joan?
So I wanted to ask a question for Rob. His mic isn't working at the moment. How often did the multi-species medicine come out, like the issues of it?
Once a month.
Wow, that's awesome.
Thank you.
Tanya, did you have a question?
Yes, and how did you collect what you put in the magazine? there was no internet back then. How did you collect the news and the information?
How did you collect the things that you ended up putting in the
How did I, do you mean how did I get the photos and this and the context, the content for the issue?
Yeah.
Every month.
Yeah, Gayle interviewed Sid quite a lot. Our members who went to conventions that would give reports. We had, feature stories. We had, somebody would put an analysis of a certain episode or an analysis of a trend in Deep Space Nine. We had an annual poll for the latest, for the favorite episode, favorite guest actor, favorite actor, favorite episode, things like that. So we had people, our members would contribute that. And we also had a letter section, which was quite robust. And so our members would contribute letters. Remember, a lot of the people weren't on the internet at the time. So the letters were the way for the club members to talk among each other. So we had the letter section, and then Gayle and others would contribute photos. Jo Beth would contribute photos. Michelle Hauser would contribute photos. People who went to conventions and saw Sid would take pictures of him and mail me photos. So that's how we got the stuff for the issues. Is that answering your question? Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Joan Marie. That was fantastic.
Thank you.
And now,
Ready
Gayle?
for me to I'll jabber here for a little while.
Absolutely. We are so grateful that you made it.
So I have not had any time to prepare any visuals like Joan had. I'm just going to talk at you for a few minutes and share some stuff. And just to pick up on the newsletter thing, when the club transitioned from multi-species medicine to Far Beyond the Stars, I mailed that out for the first, I believe it was 5 years of it. And I would do the mailings. So Carol would do the master and send it to me. And the process Joan described is similar to what we were doing. The reason I even mentioned that is because Terry Spencer, I wanted to mention Terry Spencer, that she was sort of my mailing crew. She would come over and help me do mailings. And there were other people who would occasionally help, but she was there every single time. And any of you know who know Terry Spencer, she was fantastic. And then in 2004, when my father was ill and dying, Carol took over the mailings because I couldn't do them. And she did them the rest of the years that the club was active, which was quite a few years. So, but I did have that experience of doing those mailings, and I can tell you, it was a lot of work, much tennis elbow. I mean, from stapling, finally got an electronic stapler because it was too hard on the arm, but that was a lot of work, and it was a lot of fun. We would get together and do that. I principally want to talk to everybody about the charity work that we did. So I met Sid in 1993, and I actually met him in conjunction with the doctoral dissertation I was writing on fans. I had met him in Milwaukee at a convention in March of 93, and then I corresponded with him and at a convention in April of 93. He and I actually sat down face to face and did a long interview that ended up as part of my dissertation. And it was later in 93 and into 94 that he got the idea that he would really like to do charity stuff. And so the person who had done the first short bit of the fan club, Joan had shared the I think it was the doctor's waiting room. He asked her to do a charity event, and she contacted me and said, I don't have any idea how to go about organizing a charity event. Would you help me? And so the luncheon with the doctor, it was called, in 1994, was in Phoenix in September of 1994, was the very first official charity event that we had. And Joan was there, and possibly other people on here were at that very first event. There were only 65 people at that first event. It was very small, it was very personal. We raised just under $3,000. The money went to Amnesty International, and we were off and running. And one of the notable things that came out of that event was that Sid went back to Paramount and went back to the lot and started talking to the other actors about what a great thing that he had done with the fans, raising money for charity. And very, very shortly, I was contacted by Rene Aubergenois. And I actually went to a convention in San Jose where he met me for, well, Lisa Wilcox, who was doing his fan club at the time, and Rene and I met for breakfast. And he said, I want to do charity stuff like you're doing. And so at that point, he started doing some things. The first lunch with the doctor in Phoenix was in '94. The second one in Minneapolis that Joan mentioned was in '95. And then in 1996, in Anaheim, we had a lunch with the doctor. And then the subsequent weekend, we had a luncheon with Mark Alimo and Andy Robinson. I think we called it the Cardassian something, I don't remember exactly, but, and Andy was very involved in Save the Children. So the Cardassian event, the money went to Save the Children, and I think Sid's event, the money was still going to Amnesty International. And one of the really interesting charity things that we did, and it was in 1995, some of you may know that Sid's, his uncle, Sadiq al-Mahdi, who was the holy leader of the Muslim church in Sudan and was also the deposed prime minister of Sudan. And if you don't know the story, it's worth reading up on, but basically, just to be very brief about it, and it's ironic that the dictator who took over in Sudan and who deposed Sadiq al-Mahdi's name was Bashir. I always thought that was funny. And Lieutenant Bashir was killing people. I mean, he was, it was close to genocide in the southern part of Sudan. And Sadiq al-Mahdi spoke out vociferously against the genocide in the south. Basically, Black Christians were being wiped out. And any of you who know the story of the Lost Boys of Sudan, they came out of that. But Sadiq was taken to prison. He was in his 70s, and they put him in prison. And I don't know if you're familiar with what Amnesty International does, but they have letter writing campaigns where you write to the government and you say, we know you're holding this person. We know you haven't made any charges. We respectfully ask that you either make charges or release the person. And hundreds of Star Trek fans wrote to Sudan on behalf of Sadiq al-Mahdi, who was Siddiq's uncle, and got him released. It was, long story short, it was a success. I remember how exciting it was when he had been released. And so that was, really whet our appetites for getting involved in Amnesty. And we did a lot of those kinds of letter writing campaigns for other people. But the fact that it was Sid's uncle that we had been able to help was really very special. And he eventually broadened his interest to charities like Doctors Without Borders, the Heifer Project, Habitat for Humanity. Andy always did Save the Children. Renee did all of those charities, but he ended up focusing on Doctors Without Borders. And every time we did a charity event, the actors who were there, it would be their charities that we would split the money among them. So the first three Lunch with the Doctors, 94, 95, 96, just Sid, and that money would all go wherever he had designated it, and again, a lot of it to Amnesty. Starting in 1997, we had in Scottsdale, Arizona, the very first what came to be known as the Weekend on the Promenade. And the very first Weekend on the Promenade was Siddig and Andy Robinson and Rene Aubergenois came. And again, there were only about 100 fans at that event. But by that point, we were raising like $10,000 in an event like that, and it would be divided among the actor charities. And I just want to say that by the end of, from 1994 to 2003, which was the very last charity event that we ran on behalf of Sid's fan club, it was over $350,000 that we had raised for the actors charities. So a significant amount of money for the various actors charities. The first Weekend on the Promenade in Scottsdale, those three actors, and then we had Weekend on the Promenade in San Diego in 1998, and Armin Shimmerman joined the event. And I want to mention Kathy Wang because she's on the call here. Kathy came to that event. It was her first event, and from that point on became my right-hand person running these events. I don't know how I did it without her before that, and I certainly couldn't have done it without her after that. She was just worked tirelessly at those events. So the San Diego one, I remember there were 105 people at that event, and Siddig signed autographs. I'm not exaggerating, and anybody else who was there can confirm. He signed for 9 hours at that convention. He started in the morning, and every time there was a break from the talks, he would go sit down and meet with the next batch of people. Now, 105 people into 9 hours is an average of about 5 minutes per person. So he was sitting down talking to people for 4 to 5 minutes per person. So the SidCity Social Club thing that he does, talking to individual people, has a long history. He did this at every one of our events, but that one was particularly memorable because he was like the Energizer Bunny. He just kept going and going and going, and he was busy right in through to that night. The next one, in 1999, we had the last of what we called Weekend on the Promenade. We also referred to it as the wrap party because it was in April of '99, and even though the series hadn't finished airing, they had finished filming. And so we met in Burbank, and at the Hilton. It was I don't think it's there anymore. The Burbank Hilton was across from the Burbank Airport. And again, there were about 110 fans at this thing. But the list of actors who came to that particular event was much longer. In addition to Sid, Andy, Armin, and Renee, we had Max, Aaron, Chase. Well, we had a room with 10 people to a table, 11 or 12 tables, and we had a VIP guest at every table. We had Eric Stillwell there, who is, some of you know him, he was the script coordinator for Next Gen and for Deep Space Nine. He was Michael Pillar's assistant and was an associate producer on The Dead Zone. And he also co-authored the Quark novel that Armin wrote. So and he wrote Yesterday's Enterprise. You probably all know that. He was there. David George was there, who was a novel writer. And then the most interesting person to show up at that event, this is such a great story. I was on the set collecting autographs to auction for the event. By the way, that event raised $32,000, the Burbank one. And Bill Sadler was there filming episodes, and of course Sloan. And I took script covers over to him and I said, would you autograph these for our charity event? And he's standing there signing and he says, so what is this charity event? And I explained it. And he said, well, what does one have to do to be invited to this charity event? And I said, oh, would you like to come? Yeah, I'd like to come. Can I bring my wife and daughter? And we're like, yeah, So William Sadler showed up at the dinner at this Weekend on the Promenade, this Burbank event. And he was so great. First of all, he hadn't brought anything to auction. So he sat there at this table and did what he called a self-portrait of Sloan. Well, he did a pencil sketch. It was brilliant. And then at a critical juncture, he jumped up on stage and auctioned it off. I think it went for $65 or $70. And then he signed it to the person. And then he held his own impromptu autograph session after dinner and signed for everybody, took pictures with everybody. He was there till about 10 o'clock at night, and it was just brilliant. I mean, he is such a stand-up guy. He went on to have a wonderful website. He was on the sitcom, on the sci-fi show Roswell, and he had a website for that, and he was on there all the time talking to people. He's on Twitter now. He talks to fans. So if you see William Sadler on Twitter, say hello to him. I mean, he probably will say hello back. He's very friendly. But Nana came to that event and brought Django with her. That, you know, if you see random pictures of Nana with Django at that Burbank event. And then the next day, it was a 2-day event. And on Sunday, J.G. Hertzler came. And we had a Q&A that was Sid, Andy, and J.G. Hertzler. And if any of you know J.G., he's a trip. So that was a lot of fun. And he did autographs. So that weekend, we had just a whole lot of VIP guests and raised a lot of money. And Kitty Swink was there as well. She does autograph sessions. If those of you who don't know, Armin's wife guest starred on DS9 twice. So she would have her pictures and would autograph. And they were just wonderful events. And then when the show had ended, we held charity events yearly to coincide with the Creation Grand Slam. And we held a series of them at the Holiday Inn in Monrovia, California. And they were various different people participated. And I know that one year we had Sid and Andy and Max Grudenchik. Aaron and Max and Chase did a number of events also. I coordinated one event for them at the Grand Slam, and they raised money for their charities. So there was a lot of charity stuff going on with DS9. But those Monrovia events were really great. One of the Monrovia events, we had Jeffrey Combs and Casey Biggs and Mark Alimo. And Casey Biggs was a foster child, and he had a charity that raised money for foster children. I forget the name of it, that we raised money for. And then at one of the Monrovia events, we had a day where we welcomed Enterprise fans, and Dominic Keating was one of our guests. And so we had a real fun day with him, with the combination of the DS9 and the Enterprise, Star Trek Enterprise fans. So all in all, it was a lot of years of some really fun, significant charity work. Each actor had a charity. I should have mentioned Nana's charity was multiple sclerosis because she had a brother who was quadriplegic with MS. And then Nana did a couple of her own events. I didn't run those, although I think I attended both of them, where she'd raise more money for multiple sclerosis. So it was the kind of thing where it started out with just Sid at one event, and then it just spread. And the other cool thing that happened is that the other thing that happened, I just got a text and it distracted me. I apologize. The other thing that happened is that the Voyager fans saw what we were doing. And Pam Bickle, who was part of our group, broke off and started with Robbie McNeil, and they did charity events. So there was a tremendous amount of charity work that was being done in Star Trek. And the model had started with Sid, and Sid's sort of passion to want to do work for charity. I mean, he was really the catalyst. He was the one that said, you know, I've been blessed with this Star Trek role, and I all of a sudden have a platform, and I want to do something with it. I don't want to just, you know, not have this be for good. Kathy Wang just texted me and told me Casey Biggs' charity was called Penny Lane. Any of you who wondered about that. Many years of charity work. It was very fun. It was very, very fulfilling. And we really had a great time with it. Anybody want to ask any questions? I'm sure I left gaping holes here and there in the narrative, but what would anybody like to know
Was Star Trek, and specifically working with Sid, your first sort of foray into doing these big charity events?
Yep. Well, I worked at a church for a number of years where I did, I was a music director before I became a psychologist. And so I organized kids to do musicals. And I mean, I think it's a similar skill. I mean, I think, you know, once you've organized people into an event, once you've organized people into an event, you know how to do it. I ended up eventually, when the DS9 events had sort of wound down, I worked with Grobenites for Charity, and I helped the Josh Groban fans do a whole bunch of charity events. And, you know, it's the same kind of a situation where you've got, I mean, Josh Groban has a tremendous heart for philanthropy and worked with the fans. His fan club raised over $2 million at one point for various charities. So yeah, but I think, you know, it was just a matter of being used to organizing groups and getting people going in the right direction. And I mean, obviously, a tremendous amount of help. Joan Marie worked her behind off on these events, and so did Carol Reeg, and I already mentioned Kathy Wang. I mean, it was far from me being the only person working on these, but I sort of did coordinate what it was. One of the things I would do is every 2 or 3 months, I would go over to Paramount and I would clean out Sid's trailer, and I would take everything that wasn't nailed down that he didn't want, and we'd auction it. So we had call sheets and scripts and toys that he'd been given, and they were all auctioned. And then every once in a while he'd swipe something for one of our auctions. So when he did Our Man Bashir, I think we ended up with his bow tie. And when he did Nor the Battle to the Strong, he had gloves. And we ended up buying those, and Joan Marie and I, she had one and I had the other one. I remember that. I don't know if Joan remembers that, but just cool stuff. You know, he would, you know, acquire things for our charity auctions. And it was, you know, that was pretty great. But yeah, I would just collate his call sheets or collate his script pages, and then run around, get people to sign them. All the cast were tremendously generous. I remember toward the end, there was an episode with Bill Sadler that featured Bashir and O'Brien. I can't remember the name of it. And Colm Meaney was there, and I had a box full of photos that were O'Brien and Bashir. And we were going to sell those for charity. And the guys all hated to ask Colm for autographs because he'd give them a hard time. So I said, oh, doesn't bother me. He can give me a hard time. So I went in and I said, you know, I have some stuff to sign for the charity. Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. And so I handed him this box of photos, and he went, box? This is a box? And he looked at me and he was like horrified that I'd handed him a box. It was probably 75 photos. And he went off muttering under his breath. And I went, oh my gosh, what have I done? You know? And so we went back to the trailers, and then they got called for the next scene, and we came in, and I started to go over and apologize to him, and he went, oh, it's fine. And he'd done them all already. And he handed me the box. You know, he just liked giving me a hard time, you know. But he would sign anything. There was a fan in the fan club. Some of you may remember her, Rose Blue, and Rose passed of colon cancer in 2003. But she had the plates, the Franklin Mint Star Trek plates, and she had every single one autographed except for Colm Meaney, because he didn't do conventions. And I took that plate to the set with me one time and got it signed for her. And again, he was very gracious. He's a wonderful guy, but he also liked to give us a hard time. And then Avery Brooks would, again, they hated to ask Avery to sign anything because, you know, Avery was kind of imposing. So we would, you know, I would approach Avery to sign things, and you know, he was good-natured about it, but the other guys didn't like to ask him to sign things. So that was all kind of an interesting time. I had many visits to the set. I was very, very fortunate. I spent one day on the set with someone named Tim Ransom, Anybody know who that is? Anybody want to put in the chat box who Tim Ransom is? A little trivia here. Anybody know? He played Genetic Jack in the episodes with the genetically enhanced. He was the guy that talked really, really fast. And he and I became friends over email. And he called me at one point and he said, "Oh, well, you should come when we're getting another episode. You should come." And so I went and actually spent a day with him on the set and followed him around, and we had a great time. And excuse me, he's a super guy. Yeah, many years of a lot of fun and a lot of hard work, and worked with Joan, worked with Carol, worked with the heads of the other fan clubs, Marguerite Krause, who raised additional money for charity on Renee's behalf. She did a lot of work for him. And before her, Lisa Wilcox. So we had a great little community of Deep Space Nine fandom that worked on these different charity things. It was really great. So, okay, who else? Any questions or anything?
Gayle, maybe you can talk about we adopted the what do you call it? The Lost Boys of Sudan.
Oh, right. Yeah, I mentioned them earlier. There was a group of Lost Boys of Sudan in Phoenix that actually my church was working with. What they would do is they would bring these young men to different cities and they would set them up in apartments and they would help them find jobs. And my church had 5 of these young men that we had adopted. And when Sid found out about it, excuse me, he said, "What can we do to help?" And what we ended up doing was raise money for a scholarship fund for them. And 3 of them finished bachelor's degrees on that money that the fan club raised for them. So that was pretty cool. So
The other thing I thought that you could let them know is when we did the auctions, there was also a item that you took them to visit the set if they won the auction. And
yeah, we auctioned several set visits. That's absolutely true. Yeah.
Mhm.
And that was a lot of fun. I don't remember. Is there anybody you went to the set once, didn't you? Or
no, I came in afterwards.
I know Joan did. I'm trying to think. Is there anybody else here who went on one of those set visits? I can't remember. But yeah, so and they went for a fair amount of money for the charity as well. But yeah, there were all sorts of unique ideas people would have for how to raise money for the charity. And so that was good. So any other questions or anything else you want me to talk about?
I have a question. I had read your article that you had a couple weeks ago about your history with like fandom and stuff like that, how you're one of the really early people doing what is now like fandom studies. And I was just wondering, like, were you drawn into DS9 because of like interest in the show as a fan, or because of interest in the Star Trek fandom as an academic?
Okay, that's a great question. I spent 6 years doing pop star fandoms. Starting in the late 80s, I did research on Michael Jackson, Bruce Springsteen, Paul McCartney, Madonna. And in 1991, I remember I was sitting there having lunch with my brother, and my brother is a massive Star Trek fan. He's just 2 years younger than me and a huge Star Trek fan. And I said, I've sort of played out this pop star fandom. I need to figure out another fandom to study. And he said, oh, you should do Star Trek fans. And I said, well, I was a big fan of classic Star Trek as a child. Star Trek was on when I was like 11, 12, 13. But I said, I haven't seen the new show, which would have been Next Gen at that point. I had never seen it. I knew about it, but I hadn't seen it. And I said, it's not going to work because I haven't seen it. And he said, not a problem. He came over that night to my house with 2 boxes full of VHS that he had taped off TV of Next Gen. I watched 4.5 years of Next Gen in 3 months. That was the original binge watching before it was a thing, right? so that I could go to Star Trek conventions and talk to people about the fandom and what it meant to them. And I had been a classic Star Trek fan as a child, but I hadn't kept up with it. Well, then, again, my brother and I were sitting at a convention in Tucson in late 1992, and it was Creation, and they brought up a slideshow and they said, there's a new Star Trek show coming on, and it's called Deep Space Nine, and they started flashing slides of the cast. And it was, I can remember the moment my brother leaned over and he said, you're going to follow that show from the beginning to the end. And I said, that's brilliant. That is absolutely brilliant. And it's what I did. I got in right at the beginning when the fandoms were forming, and then just followed it through. And sure, I liked Deep Space Nine. I mean, I was a Star Trek fan as a kid, but I'm very honest with people that I got back into Star Trek in order to study it. I mean, there's no equivocation about that. And it was great. It was a great way to, I mean, one of the things that was happening in psychology, I'm a psychologist, is referred to as the pathologizing of fandom. And I was firmly of the belief that there was most fandom was normal, average people. And sure, there's a fringe of people, who are mentally ill in everything, not just fandom. So I was dedicated to the idea that I wanted to explore the meaning of fandom participation without pathologizing it. And so that was sort of, and it was a unique approach. Nobody else was doing that. So I'm going to do one of these SID talks, I think it's in about a month that I'm scheduled for it, where I'm going to talk about my research. So I'm going to stop talking about it right now, but anybody who wants to hear about that, I'll be doing a whole thing on it in about a month. So, but thanks for the question. I appreciate it.
So I was just gonna say we probably have time for one more question. Anybody?
Well, someone mentioned in the chat earlier, I thought this was a good question. Did Sid call for the letter writing campaign for his uncle, or was that a fan run thing?
Yeah, well, he told me what was going on. I mean, we were actively, we had done the luncheon, we had raised some money for Amnesty. And no, he called me and said, my uncle is in prison and we need to do one of these letter writing campaigns and get him released. So it was absolutely his, he was very aware of what was going on. His father was still living at that point. Tahir was still alive. And so, his grandmother was still living over there, and he was definitely very aware of what was going on. So it was absolutely his prompt that we would get involved with this. So.
Awesome.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
I was just wondering if you ever thought about or planned on doing anything moving forward in the future with SID, kind of centered on some of the things that you've done in the past, some of the philanthropic stuff you've done.
Hadn't really planned on it. I mean, Melissa's doing stuff, and I think that right now, anyway, post-pandemic, I think everybody's still sort of, I mean, a lot of people haven't worked for a long time, and so it's, a kind of a stretch at this point. I mean, I wouldn't say never, but there's a certain amount of emotional energy a person has for charity work, and I spent pretty intense, let's see, how many years would it have been? Probably 9 or 10 years working with Grobenites for Charity with their team and coordinating events and raising money and so forth. And so, I think maybe for a little while anyway, I've done enough. But yeah, no, it was very gratifying, and that all of it, even with, I found that charity work was my entree into really understanding the meaning of the fandom for people, because when you're going into a new fandom where you aren't already a fan of the artist, so how are you going to connect with people? And the Groban fans are very passionate about his charity work, just as the Star Trek fans were passionate about their actors' charity work. And so it was an easy way for me to say, I mean, because I was obviously passionate about it. It was an easy way for me to be really involved and my heart be involved in something, even though I wasn't, I mean, I don't think I was a fan of the program the way a lot of the other fans were, but I was very committed to what we were doing for charity and for that part of it. And I think it, you know, became my way to be very sincerely involved and to connect with people, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
I think that I'm gonna have us move on to Mel, if that's all right. You have been amazing. And to anyone who is interested, her new textbook that she wrote.
Yeah, it's in production for fall.
Yeah.
It's Understanding Media Psychology. I just finished it. So all right.
Eyes peeled. But Mel, on to you.
All right.
Let's talk about the website.
Yeah, Gayle's such a badass. All right, so we're going to do a brief history of SidCity.net. As brief as I can make it, covering 25 years. So we'll see. Okay, so let's start with when I discovered Star Trek, because my entree was pretty late. It was May of 1994. I was a senior in high school. This is back when Star Trek aired in syndication. So in my market, it aired on, Next Generation aired right after the Saturday night news. So 10:35 p.m. And then after Next Gen was DS9 at 11:35. So my brothers would watch it at night, would watch both series at night, but I was never interested in it because I did not care for the original series, mostly because of William Shatner. I just couldn't stand him. So I never had gotten into Star Trek. And my brothers would be watching it. And usually I'd be, you know, at that point I was going to bed or I was up in my room reading. But I remember one pivotal Saturday night in May of '94, I was walking through the living room to the kitchen to get something to drink. And I heard this voice coming out of the TV. And I stopped and I turned and I said, who is that? What are you watching? It was Patrick Stewart as Captain Jean-Luc Picard. And I sat down and watched the rest of the episode with them and was hooked. I didn't start watching DS9 for a few months because it was so much darker and so much weirder. I just couldn't quite, the visuals, I couldn't quite get there. But similarly to Gayle, I did the original binge over the summer after I graduated. Literally, I think there were 3 new episodes of the entire run of Next Generation when I found it. It was late. But our local library had the VHS tapes. And then since it was in syndication and it had just finished also, the local stations were rerunning from the beginning. So I was able to watch all 7 seasons over the summer. And around the end of summer, I finally decided to give DS9 a try because I think I had seen a preview, or it was another case where my brothers were watching it and I just happened to still be in the room. And I heard another beautiful British voice. And that was young Dr. Bashir. And I was like, what? This is another sound that I like. And so I stuck with it and ended up becoming a fan of DS9 before season 3 started, but so still a little bit late. So that's how I discovered Star Trek. And then, this is my senior picture on the left. So one of my good friends in high school, her name is Nancy, that's her on the right. She was a year behind me in high school. So I had graduated and I was heading into college. Nancy still had her senior year ahead of her. Nancy's mom did not want her to talk on the phone very much. So we had been lab partners in chemistry my senior year and got up to shenanigans. But her mom wouldn't let her talk on the phone. So we would write letters to each other, like good old fashioned snail mail. And I had mentioned to her over the summer that I had gotten into Star Trek, that I had started watching it, and asked her if she watched it. And she was like, yes, I'm a huge fan. And she was so excited. And she's like, why couldn't you have figured this out? You know, found it while you were still in high school with me so we could talk about it. But in our small town in Kansas, finding someone else who liked Star Trek was difficult. It was difficult. It was like Joan Marie noted, things like the Star Trek Welcome Wagon or fanzines, and even fan clubs like Doctors Exchange and Far Beyond the Stars helped you identify like-minded fans in your area, because you just didn't, and this is, you know, the mid-90s, it was not really something that you broadcast, especially in the land of Chiefs fans and, you know, Kansas City Royals and all of that. It was, you know, sports were what you were a fan of, not sci-fi. Anyway, so she and I, we got very excited. You know, we're writing our letters up back and forth. After every new episode of DS9, we would write a letter back and forth. And I tried to find them. I think they're in a box with my my fan club membership. But Nancy's the one who introduced me to multi-species medicine. She gave me, for Christmas, she gave me a membership in the fan club because she was a member. And that way we could, you know, we would have something else to talk about and stay connected. And, you know, it was her way of enabling me, keeping me in this fandom. So she gifted me with my first year of membership. Neither of us had any idea where that would lead, but you can all thank Nancy for getting me involved in Sid's fandom. I was really impressed with the fan club. I loved getting the newsletter and finding out everything, because again, this is really pre-internet. I had logged on for the first time in November of 1994, when you had to telnet in to get places, and you know, it was all text-based. My main hangout was a talker, which is a precursor to a chat room, a talker called Mars Base Alpha 4, which I absolutely chose because of the similarity to Deep Space Nine. The name was similar. It was, it was based in Manchester, at a university in Manchester, and run by several college students there.
I think I speak for everyone when I say thank you, past Nancy.
Yes. So I was really impressed with the fan club and all of the information that I was getting from there. I had gone online for the first time and was on this talker. The very first person that I connected with, that I talked to there, was a guide. Her username was Iliane, but her real name is May. We're part of a very small group chat with somebody else who joined Mars a year later, named Sarah. May and I were bridesmaids in Sarah's wedding, and we still communicate pretty much daily. So the internet's given me a lot. So I'm in college, and 1996, we now have the World Wide Web, the information superhighway. And I decided I wanted to learn HTML. So this is pre-blogs, pre-social media. This is in the era where you don't tell anybody on the internet your real name, or you don't post a picture of yourself. You protect everything. You're not putting yourself out there in any way. And I had a little website on GeoCities, which is now defunct, but it was a place where you could go put up your own website for free. You would choose the appropriate neighborhood for the type of website that you wanted to create. I had one that was a movie review blog that earned some awards for my my family-friendly movie reviews. But that was back when going to the movies cost like $2 on a matinee, you know, so I would go to a lot of matinees and write reviews. And then I decided I wanted to do something a little more complex. And I went looking around for Star Trek related, and especially DS9 related websites. And I found a couple for Bashir, dedicated to Bashir, there, but there was nothing for Sid. There were no sites dedicated to Sid. There were sites for pretty much every other cast member. The actual actor, there was a fan site, but there were none for Sid that I could find. This is pre-Google, so in order to be listed in a search engine, you had to manually submit your website. So they may have been out there, they just weren't findable. So I said, well, hey, I'm in his fan club. and I get his newsletter. I've got information. So I'm going to create a website, a fan site for Sid. And Gayle gave me permission to include some of the information from the newsletter and excerpt the biography of him that she had written. So that was up there. And I built it in Area 51, the neighborhood Area 51, because it was science fiction. So it was there. I cannot remember the actual number. Your website had a number because it was neighborhoods. So it was all set up like you're in an actual physical neighborhood. So it had a number as the address. And I can't remember what it was, which means I cannot find it on the Wayback Machine and find any screenshots of it. And I've lost, I think I might have them on a, 3.5 inch or 3-inch floppy somewhere that probably is so, like, I don't know if anything could ever run it at this point. It's probably got rust on the disk, but so I built the first version of SidCity in 1996 on GeoCities in Area 51. History is made and then lost because I have no idea where those files are. So then, I wanted to, people ask about the name. So SimCity was a big deal. I see some of you, yeah. So that was a big deal. That was the first, it was the first game of its kind to really hit big. And back in the mid 90s, we got cute with the names. So SidCity comes from SimCity. And it also gave me a way to organize the website. Again, we were very cute about how we did things. So this is the website banner. I'm pretty sure this was the last one that was on GeoCities before I moved over to a private server. So it's got, you can see it's got these different pages, different categories around the city theme. And this is the navigation. It was an image map. I learned how to make image maps. There's Papyrus, which was really cutting edge in 1999. And so that was SidCity. That's where the name comes from. And I used it to organize navigation for the website for like 15 years probably. So the first time that I met Sid was at the DS9 wrap party, the Weekend on the Promenade party in April of '99 that Gayle had just mentioned. And these are photos from that. I cannot find, I just found, like 5 minutes before it was my turn to go, I found photos of Nana and Django that I apparently did not have scanned and on my computer. So I'll have to get those scanned and uploaded to the website. Little 3-year-old Django. So this is the first time that I met Sid in person, and they gave me a certificate of appreciation for running the website. I had to go up in front of everybody. It was very embarrassing, very sweet, but very embarrassing. This woman who's in this photo with Sid and I, her screen name is Meg, and she helped me a lot on the website for the first few years. She was instrumental in, she was a moderator in the forums. She was my sounding board. She has a son who's the same age as Django. And here we've got William Sadler, and that's you can barely see it, but this is the pencil drawing that he made and auctioned off. And Renee was up there upping the price. Renee was a really good auctioneer, because he'd be like, come on, you guys, it's worth more than that. You want to pay more than that. This is for charity. So that was a lot of fun. This is the first time I had traveled alone. It was the first time that I had flown on a plane. It was a lot of firsts there. So this is slightly out of order because 1998 is when the site became official. So this is one of the first headers that says the official website for Alexander Siddig. It was March of 1998. I remember I was on spring break from college, from university, and Gayle emailed me and said, hey, I'm here with Sid, and we're looking at the website again, and wondered if you would be willing to make it the official website. And I was like, oh, let me think. Okay, yes, I would. So it became the official website in 1998. And now you'll see on this graphic, you can see it says the official website. A few years later, 2 or 3 years later, we switched it to the official fan site because there's some legal implications there. So I've had some people ask me about that as well, and I've had to ask for some corrections in some articles. If it's an official website, that implies that he has some control over it and that he's responsible for content and that he contributes content. He doesn't really. I'm pretty autonomous when it comes to the website. It is his official representation online. He has no other online presence, but well, unless you count gaming with Colin, but that's not his official online presence. Anyway, so it's his official fan site because it is owned and operated by a fan. So he's not responsible unless it's something that I post, like the letters that he sends in occasionally that are specifically from him. The content is not by him, it's by me, and I'm responsible for it. So that's a legal distinction. And also just, I think it's just better for everybody to be clear that Mel's the one writing this, not Sid. So, and that becomes important a little bit later on. Fortunately, we had made this distinction before something got hairy, but we'll get to that in just a second. So post DS9, this is a screenshot of the website in 2002. It's talking about some of the post DS9 work that he's doing. You can see Reign of Fire has just come out. The Dragon movie it's about to come out. He's got an appearance with Andy scheduled in Bournemouth. I don't know. I'm not British. I don't know how to pronounce it. You can see also on the left, we've got our city-centric navigation continues with some breakdowns of what you'll find in each hub. So we have there's some stuff cut out there, like the library that had fan fiction. We hosted a lot of fan fiction because fanfiction.net existed, but AO3 didn't exist yet. So we housed quite a few fanfic stories on the website. And you see that there's an update there in the headlines that Gabrielle Lawson had a couple of new stories featuring Dr. Bashir that had been added to the library. Gabrielle's been on in the social club a couple of times. She's one of the OG Bashir fans and Sid fans. We have the Sid City Movie of the Month Club. No idea what that was. I don't remember that at all. It was a surprise to me when I saw this. So I'm not sure what that is. We have a note about Sid and Nana's divorce because that had not been publicly announced. And then Nana was engaged to her now husband, Matthew Rimmer. And I think it was a Broadway trade picked that up and announced it. And then a bunch of fans were like, what? Isn't she already married? So we had to put up just a little a statement there. And then you'll see What You Come Back To has been updated. And that's something that I will share a little bit more about later because that was a fun project. So this is 2002. Here we've got 2004, 2005. And this was another milestone moment for me in managing and running a fan site. So I was a huge fan of Orlando Bloom. As soon as Legolas appeared in Fellowship of the Ring, I was like, who is that? I remember distinctly. And I mentioned it to Gayle, and Gayle said, oh, hey, have you heard about this Orlando Bloom fan site? That it's primarily forums. And she sent me the link and I joined it, and she ditched me there shortly thereafter, but it's all good. It's all fine. I ended up becoming part of the admin team, part of the mod team there. So I was huge fan. And so Gayle calls me in early 2004 and says, "Are you sitting down?" And I said, "Well, I mean, I am now, you know." So she said, "So Sid has just signed on to Kingdom of Heaven." Pretty sure I screamed in her ear because Orlando Bloom was the lead for Kingdom of Heaven. I was very excited. And at the time when Sid would sign on to a new project, I would put together a dossier for him about the project, what it's about, who else is starring, how he might know them, if he's worked with them before, who's the director, where are they filming, any information that I could glean from various sites around the web, which at the time was unusual. There was really this being able to go to Wikipedia or IMDb and finding all of the information in one place, or going to another website and finding all of that information in the same place wasn't really a thing yet. And so I just had different places that I would go look for information. And because this was an Orlando Bloom film, I already had a bunch of information because of my affiliation with his fan site. So I put together this dossier and sent the link over so that he could look at it. It wasn't live yet. He was, unless you had the direct link, you couldn't see it. So I sent that over to him, and then like a day or two later, Gayle told me that he had, the contract was signed, and so I could, reveal it, basically announce that he had been cast in this project. And I was just ecstatic that I got to do this. It's two of my favorite people in the same movie. Ah! And so I posted the announcement on the front page with a link to and made the other page live, and, linked to it and had all this information that I had pulled from here and here and here and here. And, here's the whole cast, and it's about the Crusades, and we gleaned this from here, and we've got this information from here. And so then, like the next day, I think it was, get an email from Gayle. And Sid's called her. He didn't have my phone number at the time. He had called her and said, Fox Legal is looking for Mel. And Ridley Scott is pissed. So I had the heads up, but within about 5 minutes of receiving that email, I was at work. Fox Legal they had tracked me down through the domain name registration. You have to have you have to include a phone number, and I had included my work phone number, because I didn't want to put my personal number out there on the web, because hello, it's the internet, you don't do that. So I had my work number out there. And at this point, we're not on GeoCities anymore. It's hosted, I was working for my brother, who owned an internet service provider. Back in the days of the dial-up, it was still, the screechy. And, but we had a server, multiple servers, and could host websites. And so I had moved SidCity there and had the domain name SidCity.net, because .com was taken. So it's SidCity.net forever. I tried to change it to AlexanderSiddig.com, which I own the domain for that. If you type it in, it'll take you to SidCity.net, because nobody was having it. By then, it had been like 10 years of SidCity.net, and nobody wanted it to be AlexanderSiddig.com. And he also thought that was kind of weird. I mean, he thinks SidCity.net's weird, but if it was his actual name, he'd be like, that's weird. I don't like that. So it's still SidCity.net. So they had found me at work. So I was the office manager, and now we would call it like customer onboarding, but when a new customer came in and signed up, and I would walk them through the whole process and tell them, here's how you hook up a modem and enter information so that you can log on to the internet. So I get a call. It's like 2 PM, and from Fox Legal. It's a lovely, lovely woman in a lawyer in the legal office, and passing on to me that Ridley Scott has seen my website. He has seen the Kingdom of Heaven page, and he is not happy. Where did I get all of this information? Sid signed an NDA. So, this is not okay. He's, this is big trouble. He's in big trouble. Ridley Scott is pretty secretive about his projects. I know now. So this was not okay. So I explained to the lawyer from 20th Century Fox that, listen, I got it from here and here and here and here and here. I mean, it's all out there. It's just, this is the first time it's been on the same page. So we negotiated, and for a year, the only thing I was allowed to have on the website about Kingdom of Heaven is what you see in the middle of this page. For a solid year. Sid's latest project announced. Sid has landed a role in the upcoming epic Kingdom of Heaven, which links to the IMDb page. The film also stars Orlando Bloom and Liam Neeson and is directed by Ridley Scott. That's it. I could give no other details. Nothing, none of the other information I had could be public. And I learned a lot from that experience. When Sid, he was on his way to the set when this was all going down. And when he got there, he emailed me and said, you know, they can't do that. That's not okay. When I get to the set tomorrow, I'm going to tell them that they're not allowed to tell you what to do. And I emailed him back and I said, hey, you know what? This site is about promoting your career, not getting you fired. So it's fine. Don't worry about it. I'm fine. And he's like, it's just a tempest in a teapot. I said, yeah, it's fine. It's good. It's good. I mean, we've got this information up. I've talked to Fox Legal. This is approved. Go film your movie. It's fine. So this is what's up for a year. Now here's the payoff. SidCity.net was at the Kingdom of Heaven world premiere in London. This is the moment on the press line when Sid recognizes Chaz and Dee are the two who Sidsters who went and filmed the red carpet for us, because I couldn't at the time. So that's when he recognized. I had told him, you know, this is who's going to be there, and here's their photos, and you know, and they had a little sign that said SidCity.net. And so that's the moment that he recognizes that his fan club is on the red carpet to interview him. So you can go watch, the video is posted on YouTube. If you ever want to go check that out, SidCity.net/KOH premiere will get you there. It's about 5 minutes, I think. He talked to our correspondents for way too long and therefore barely got to talk to anybody else on the line. I'm sure that surprises everyone. The man behind him is his stepfather, Michael, who he took to the premiere with him, which was pretty cool. Another thing that we got to do is 20th Century Fox sent us a bunch of swag that we used for a raffle. And the proceeds, we raised about $1,000 for Doctors Without Borders. They sent us posters, soundtrack. There's a really cool leatherette messenger bag that was embossed with Kingdom of Heaven. And that was, and then when the DVD came out, they sent me a bunch of DVDs to give away. So it turned out okay in the end. I learned a lot about how to work with the network and studio, and when not to reveal information that you gotta wait until it's okay. This is 2005, May of 2005, and then in, I believe it's November of 2005 is when Syriana came out. So 2005 was a big year for Sid, and I was able to be involved in some of the promotional work for Syriana on Sid's behalf. I wrote his bio for the junket materials, provided some other information for them, and yeah, it was really cool. So that's when I kind of realized, that's when I realized that the SidCity.net is his representation. He doesn't have a publicist, and so the website kind of serves that purpose, even though it's technically a fan site. It's always been about supporting him in his career, but this was the moment when Ridley Scott got mad at me, is the moment when I realized, oh, this has bigger implications. You know, it's not just fans coming in and checking out the site and looking for information. Like the industry is watching as well. So, you know, that's just helped inform some of the things that some of the choices that I've made over the years, including not announcing things until they're official. These are 2 drafts that are still in draft mode on the website. If you look at the dates, it's been a while and these projects have still not been announced. And I can't be the one that does it because I'm not going to do that. So until they're officially announced, they don't exist. But as soon as they are announced, I'm ready for them. That was the case with Shantaram. I had that post ready to go. We did not think that it would be announced until closer to when he left to start filming, or once he was actually there and was filming. And then they surprised us. Apple surprised us by putting it out with, you know, like 3 weeks before he left. So fortunately, I already had a lot of the information there. I just had to link to the official source. So it didn't look like I already knew everything. So those are the kinds of things that you learn over the course of 25 years of running a site like this, is how to not step on toes and get people fired. So I wanted to do, since this is a fan site, I wanted to talk a little bit about fandom during this period. So this is a photo from Vertical Limit, and which he signed for us to auction off. Guys, he's always been a troll, always. This is from a quiz that we had, and you would answer different questions and it would tell you which of Sid's characters you were. So this is AJ from Rain of Fire. If you saw the exchange on Twitter a couple of days ago between me and Christy, she was asking if I had these graphics because she's the one who wrote the quiz and she still has the text for the quiz. So that may be appearing on a SidCity.net near you. Another thing that I found in the depths of the archives is the virtual 8th season that several people collaborated on from the message board. At the time we had, this is again pre-Facebook, pre-social media really. So we had forums and a bunch of people collaborated on, gosh, I can't remember how many episodes they got to, 9 or 10 episodes of this season 8, What You Come Back To. And I found all of it. So I've got to figure out whether to post it as is, as an artifact of its time, or let them get their hands on it and edit. There are also a couple of partial rolling stories that were ridiculous and hilarious. One of them has to do with the leather pants that Sid loved wearing from like 2001 to 2005, I think, or 2003, 2004, somewhere in there, the early aughts. There was a rolling story that was like people were contributing to. It's ridiculous. I've only got the first 2 chapters of that. And then there's another one that has to do with, it's a Buffy DS9 something else mashup, and I can't remember what it is, but I've only got the first chapter of that one. But it's, this fandom has always been a little chaotic. This is not new. And we also had wallpapers that you could download. We had, oh gosh, probably 15 different wallpapers that you could download for your very own PC so that Sid could be with you always. And these were fan art that was contributed. And then conventions. This is Tulsa in 2005. There's, this is actually somebody that I met on the Orlando Bloom fan site who then jumped ship to the Sid fan site. This is my friend Angie, who lived near Tulsa at the time and was very excited that he was going to be essentially in her backyard. That's me when I had brown hair. And this is Leah, who was also very, very excited about coming. She and I'm using their screen names, Spider and Leah, flew into Wichita, and I picked them up on my way down to Tulsa. And so we had this whole road trip thing going on. It was fun. So then we go to the teens, fandom in the teens. So it's it was a somewhat quiet time. Sid was doing some small projects. He was mostly in the UK. This is when his stepfather was ill, and so he was sticking around the house, the family home. So he wasn't out doing a lot at the beginning of the teens. But this is so this is a post on the Facebook forum for SidCity.net and by Denise Stobie, who's actually D of Chaz and D, who filmed who were on the red carpet for Kingdom of Heaven. So this is Chaz's daughter meeting Sid for the first time. So that was very cool. That was a Destination Star Trek. There's another, here's our friend Renee getting to meet Sid in Vegas in 2019, I believe it was. That is Sid, a very blurry picture at the Warner Brothers signing booth at San Diego Comic-Con, because they would not let you stand still. You had to keep moving because it's a madhouse there. I took that photo. And he's laughing because he's just seen me in the crowd, and I'm like, ah! And he's, you know, there's a line of fans waiting to get his picture, get his autograph for Gotham. There's plenty of memes happening during the teens. We've got this this lovely mashup of DS9 and Game of Thrones, and some fan art. This is Sid as Reuben in Peaky Blinders. So that's what was happening in that decade, really. And then we come to present day. So this is the email that Sid sent me in March 23rd, 2020. That started this is where the social club generated from. He emailed me, and I happened to be checking my email on my phone at the time while I was in Genevieve's room, my niece's room, chatting, and I said, oh, hey, how funny, I have an email in drafts for him to see if he wants to do anything, because, you know, do you want to film a video? Do you want to do something? And he's just emailed me and wants to do something. And so she and I did some brainstorming, and I emailed him back with this long list of options of things that we could do. And that's what we came up with. Genevieve helped brainstorm a bunch of it. She's wants to become a community organizer. That's her goal. She graduates from university in about a week. No, in exactly a week, actually. And so that's what she wants to do, is become a community organizer. So she has all kinds of ideas about things that we can do. She had some very cool ideas, but the SidCity Social Club arose from some of her suggestions. So I got to give her credit for that too. And that brings us to now. That's your brief history of SidCity.net from 1996 to 2021.
That's fantastic.
It's been quite a ride.
For sure.
Oh, I wanted to share that as I've been digging around trying to find things to share, and also trying to find my fandom, my fan club certificate, which I still haven't found. I did find, is Christy here?
I don't think so.
No? Okay. I'll have to take some photos and send them to her. So she took a photo, she did a photo shoot with Sid in when he was at a convention in Florida in 2004, I think. 2003, 2004. And the photos that we got are he was being a dork. But anyway, we wanted photos specifically for the website, things that were not copyrighted, you know, things that we could use without getting in trouble. And so he agreed to a photo shoot. She took some photos. He had a really awkward hair length at the time. But, you know, and anyway, so I'm just going to show you. So we made some merch. So this is the OG SidCity.net merch. This is stickers. I got a whole stack of them. I've got some journals, some blank journals that we had made. I think these are from Cafe Press, if I remember correctly. And t-shirts with the website on the back. I did not know that I had kept any of this stuff. Oh my gosh, I didn't know that there was any of this remaining. So I've got a white t-shirt over here too. But I just kind of screamed when I opened the tote to see if I could find my fan club certificate, and there was all of this merch from back in the day. We also did a couple of calendars, which I thought I had kept, but apparently not. Yeah, so things have changed. Fandom's wild, y'all.
Oh my God. Notebooks.
I'm totally putting this on my laptop. Absolutely. It's going to go next to my world tour sticker. Yeah.
As it should. As it should.
It should. Yeah. It's part of the evolution of SidCity. Yeah.
So I guess you're in kind of a different position from Gayle and Joan Marie, in that like you've stayed very active with Sid throughout his career and still are, and not that Joan Marie and Gayle haven't been, but in like a different way, obviously. So like how, besides the website kind of shifting a little bit, how did things change once Deep Space Nine ended for you?
Well, I was always a Sid fan, more than, I mean, I was a big DS9 fan, but Dr. Bashir was not my favorite character on DS9. That's another thing that I found when I was searching around. I didn't pull it out, but I found my definitive ranking of the best Star Trek characters of all time. Just so you know, Captain Kirk is like the last on the list. But Bashir is number 10. He made the top 10 barely. He cracked it, but he's number 10, and he's my third favorite for DS9. It goes Odo, Kira, Dr. Bashir. So just putting that out there, just, you know, full disclosure. I was always, the thing about the fan club that kept me interested in it is how I loved that Sid agreed to it, because it was supporting charities, because it had this philanthropic angle. And then everything that I was learning about him as a person impressed me. So for me, it was always more about the person rather than the character. So when DS9 ended, I mean, I was a little bit sad because I liked the show, but there was never a question that the website would keep going. I was excited to see what he was going to do next, and you know, where his career was going to go from there. I always wanted the website to be a support, not a hindrance. It's never been a gushy, oh my God, he's so hot. It's nothing that's never going to get posted on the website ever, because he hates it. I mean, I know I've heard from a few of you contacting me in horror about a video from a convention from, I think it's from '96, where he's on stage and suddenly all these panties get flung at him in this coordinated effort. That was a thing that was happening at conventions in the '90s. But if you watch it, you can see him kind of die inside. And I saw that shortly after I had started the website, and I was like, okay, good to know. This is not the kind of attention this man wants. So
well, I have to jump in and say we did that as a joke.
Yeah,
we knew he was going to hate it, and we did it because we were giving him a hard time. I mean,
and he probably deserved it.
He said he hated that kind of thing, and we did it purposefully. You have to understand, my relationship with Sid is he's sort of like an extra younger brother. He is actually the same age as my youngest brother. They're within 2 months of an age. And so, yeah, that was sort of like something a big sister would do to a younger brother. And it was meant to make him cringe. So,
well, it was valuable, Gayle, because I don't know if the website would still be around if I had gone the way of many other fan sites. Gone the cringe route, you know. He would never have made it official. It would not still be running. So
can I add to the recollection of this incident?
Yeah.
Gayle ran this by me when we were planning the Minneapolis event, And I was, I hope Gail will forgive me for saying this, but it is true. I was less than enthusiastic about it. And so Gail did not tell me that it was going on because I was under the impression up until it happened that it was not going to happen, that I had vetoed it. And apparently I did not. And the first thing that I did, I mean, I got on stage after this with Sid. And the first thing that I said in front of the audience, and I knew this wouldn't make me very popular, but I told Sid right in front of everybody, I just want you to know, Sid, that I did not consent to this.
Well, and there was like Michelle Hauser was there. She's goes way back to the beginning of the fan club, and she's retired Air Force. She's a retired Air Force major, and she had found a camouflage underwear.
Yeah, BDUs, yeah.
Yeah, and when she threw those up there, and I remember he picked him up and he looked at him and he looked right at her and said, Michelle, and started cracking up. He knew, but it was just a big joke. He knew we didn't feel that way about him. He knew we were giving him a hard time. And yeah, it was just one of those things. But yeah, it was pretty.
Trolling the troll.
Yes.
Yes,
exactly.
for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that was that was a formative experience for me as far as what the website was going to be, where the focus would be and where it would stay, and still does. And there's been an intentional effort on my part within the fandom, at least what's kind of comes under my purview, to avoid the gushy, he's so hot kind of narrative.
Well, kind of along that vein, since you're the person who does a lot of the online direct interaction with fans, how have you ever had to deal with fandom drama in sort of the larger scale, or even in like smaller incidents? How do you handle that?
So yeah, I have. I don't know that we've really had anything major, anything that's been public, that's been a major incident, nothing that would end up on Fandom Wink, because usually I take care of it behind the scenes before it gets that far. There have been a few people who I have a file with red flags, and there's a few people from, a couple of them date back 20 years, who are not allowed to be in contact with him at all. A couple of them reemerged after several years of not hearing from them when the social club started up, and had to be, fortunately, I was like, oh, that name sounds familiar. Let me pull up my files. And they, just had to be observed, and neither of them were ever given the opportunity to have a one-on-one chat with him, because they were not, it was clear that the behavior that was a red flag before had not changed. So and Sid knows who they are. He's the one who alerted me to them. So there's that. There's a lot of minor drama, tempest in the teapot, as Sid likes to call it, that happens among a fandom. And I think that's normal, because anywhere that you have a group of people, there's going to be some friction. Just because we all like the same person or the same thing doesn't mean we have to all get along perfectly. It doesn't mean we're going to like each other. That's just not how that's not realistic. And for the most part, you can just kind of keep an eye on it, and it eventually just kind of dies out. But I have had quite a bit of experience with fandom drama in other fandoms as an observer and as a target. There've been a couple pretty bad experiences in other fandoms. One of them was so bad, it was a years-long targeted campaign where I was sort of the face of a fandom, and somebody else did not care for that. But it was another instance where I had put in the work way before they did, and they were mad that I had access that they didn't have, and they started a like an intentional campaign, and it got so bad that well, I got into therapy before it got the story has a semicolon, not a period. Let's put it that way. So I got into therapy and with a psychologist who is PTSD is his specialty, and he helped me get through a lot of it and learn how to handle situations like that. Gave me a lot of tools which have come in handy in the years since. It's been about 10 years now, and it's having gone through that experience. I mean, I've been in online fandom since I got online, basically. So since 1994. So I've seen a lot. Some of the stuff that landed on Fandom Wink, if any of you guys are familiar with that, it's defunct now, but like the Crystal Wank from the Lord of the Rings fandom. Yeah, I was there for that. I didn't participate, but I was watching it going, what's happening? That's when I learned what a sock puppet is. So I have quite a bit of experience, both as an observer and as a target. And I've learned that a lot of what's going on in these situations is the perpetrators are usually jealous and just, kind of petty, insecure. And so they target someone else who they see as, maybe having more clout, having some kind of access, or just being liked. You don't even have to be a BNF, a big name fan. Technically, you can just be someone that other people like and mention, and that's enough for them to come after you. I'm always getting information, whether people realize that I'm making connections or not. I'm always getting information from all over the place for various reasons. Most of it's innocuous, but every now and then, there will be a situation where somebody will mention something, or somebody will behave in a way, and I'll think, that reminds me of I have a reference. I need to go find, and then I kind of follow the trail and figure things out. So I pretty much know, even though I'm not maybe an active participant in all of the side things that are going on around SidCity, just because I don't have the time. I do pretty much know what's going on, and I see pretty much everything that's going on. And I rarely need to actually step in and do anything directly, but because it usually does just take care of itself. People move on, they get bored. Sometimes though, I need to advise, somebody will come to me and say, I don't know why this is happening. I didn't realize that I was behaving in a way that was offensive. And I have to say, listen, I could tell you that you're not, because I have experience with you, or I've been observing you too. Not to be creepy, you guys, but I'm aware.
The all-seeing, all-knowing Mel.
It's just,
No, that's all.
It's a gift and a curse, I'll say that. So, and I have to, sometimes I do say, that this behavior might be what's triggering this reaction, and you could work on that. But a lot of times I just am like, you're not doing anything wrong. You're just out there living your life, and they're jealous of the fact that you're having a fine old time. And, you have not overstepped. So it's unfortunate that happens, but it does. It's happened in every fandom I've ever been a part of, and it will probably continue to happen because human nature. The thing is, it's always, what's the term for the people who are engaged in that sort of behavior, it always costs them more than it's worth. It's always it's not worth it. They may not realize that they've missed out on opportunities.
Is that
But
Pyrrhic
Sunk
victory?
cost? There we
yeah,
go.
the Pyrrhic victory. They may not realize that they've missed out on things, but they have. So I don't expect the entire fandom to be kumbaya all the time, you know, sitting around the campfire and everybody loves everybody, but it's you know, I expect everybody to respect each other and to be kind. Even if you don't actually get along with the person, that's fine. You don't need to hang out with them. So that's my take. That's how I handle drama for the most part. I mean, every now and then I have needed to step in and do something. You know, we had an incident last year where I did have to step in and tried, and it couldn't, the person just could not get it, what they needed to do. And, you know, I had brought it up to Sid. I rarely give him details on any of this stuff because if he knew about fandom drama, he would quit. He would just quit doing this because he doesn't have time for that. So he doesn't need to know. So in the rare cases when I do need to bring it to his attention, you know, he wants me to try again. And, you know, because he's a very, you know, let's hug it out. Let's figure this out. And in this case, it just wasn't working. And the person actually tried to go around me and get to him through someone else. And the communication was, I mean, it's what I had been receiving. So I knew it wasn't news to me, but it was to him. And he was pretty upset because they had decided to say that I was out to get them and that I was gossiping about them and saying untrue things. And he was like, no, it's time to cut this person loose. So, you know, it's just, these things happen. They happen in any fandom. And I think, you know, somebody had asked me several months ago, how do you manage it? And how do you manage running a website, a fan site like this, and, you know, the social club, and without it consuming you? And you've got to realize that it's not your whole life. It's part of what you do. You know, it's an interest. I love it. It's something that, I mean, I wouldn't still be doing it if I didn't care. But it's not the only thing that's going on in my life. I have cats trying to rip open cat food. I have nieces graduating. I'm throwing a birthday party tonight. She's 4. She's the wiggly worm niece that some of you saw last fall. So there's, you know, I have plenty of other stuff going on, so I can just kind of ground myself in other things and not let the drama take over.
That was a wonderfully philosophical and informative answer. Thank you.
I've had a lot of time and experience to get here.
Well, does anyone else have any other questions for Mel?
I do. Okay. So one thing I always wonder about is, like you said, you started as like a regular fan as a teenager, and, you know, now you're good friends with Sid and you run the closest thing to his official website. I often wonder, as someone who's, you know, done interviews with anime creators that I really admire, and I'm always like, even though I've been doing this for a while, I'm always a nervous wreck. And everyone who like is my friend in the social club can say that I'm always super nervous when I'm about to talk to Sid, even though I've done it several times now. How do you like make like how did it feel to make that jump to actually knowing him as a person? And you know, how do you just sort of deal with that in general? Does it make sense what I'm asking?
Yeah, it does. It was nerve-wracking at first, but mostly because I have pretty severe social anxiety. So meeting anybody new is pretty nerve-wracking. I don't care what their job is.
Same here.
Yeah, it's hard. And you all know, you know, at this point, you've all been around Sid quite a bit. You've seen him calm people down. You know, he knows that you're nervous and he knows how to handle it. And so he did that with me. Excuse me. It took a few years before I was really comfortable like contacting him first about something. because I never wanted to overstep. I was worried about that. But then, I mean, we've known each other for 22 years now. It's, if it wasn't comfortable by now, then there's a problem. But as far as practical advice goes, I made a decision early on about what kind of relationship I wanted to have with him, and what were my expectations, and what was I comfortable with, and how did I want to present myself. Like I never wanted to come across as some, and I hate when this is used in a derogatory way, but I'm not really sure how else to get it across. I didn't want to come across as a fangirl. I didn't want to be that stereotype, because I knew that that would be the death of the website. If I did that, he would cut it loose. And I wanted to be involved in, I mean, Gayle was running these very impressive charitable endeavors, and I wanted to be a part of that. And I wanted to support that in any way that I could. I was excited to see what, Sid's career was going to be, and be a support for that. And so I made a decision about what kind of relationship I wanted this to be, and then just operated from that. And then I'm also pretty pragmatic about famous people. I've interviewed hundreds, and been around, when I go to Comic-Con, I go as press. And so I'm there, I'm invited to parties with the talent. And it's always just my general social anxiety that kicks in, and not very rarely is it like being starstruck. So I'm just really pragmatic about the fact that this person is here because they're good at their job, and I want to talk to them because they're good at their job. And also, are they a cool person? Let's find out. And so if you come at it from that respect, from that perspective, I've found that my experiences with celebrities, and also in my day job, I'm a freelance writer, and I get to interview executives of Fortune 50 companies, and people who are running nonprofits that are doing amazing things, and people that go on to get be really famous, and in other spheres. And it's just, I've noticed that approach makes them a lot more comfortable. I'm easy to talk to, because I'm not like, instead I'm like, gosh, what you're doing is super cool. Let's talk about that. Or, you're a really cool person. Let's talk about that. So.
Well, I just want to share real quick.
Go for it.
Well, something you just said triggered a memory, because I had to get over, like the very first celebrity I interacted with in my research was Michael Jackson. You don't get any bigger than that. So at that point, it's all downhill from there. But my fan moment, I was standing on the set of DS9, and I was collecting autographs for a charity auction, and I looked up, and walking across the floor toward me was James Darren. And he was one of my very first celebrity crushes.
Aww.
When I was a teenager. And I just sort of went and just lost it, just could barely speak to him. I did speak to him, and I had a whole stack of script covers I wanted autographed. Did I ask him? Hell no. And Rene Aubergenois was over on the side, and he saw the whole thing, and I went over to him and I said, and he was laughing, and he said, oh, I'll get him to sign him, don't worry about it. But that was a whole different thing, because in the context of my life, he was a teen crush. And you know what that is.
Oh, yeah.
So, so even though I was completely not starstruck by anybody at that point, here's this man that I had a crush on as a teenager. And I met him again a couple of times after that, and talked to him a few times. But that initial time, him walking toward me, it was just unbelievable. So
really, yeah, it does. It triggers that teen girl.
See, now, if you met Orlando Bloom, that might be a little different.
Oh, I have met him.
But
yeah,
because you had a big thing for him.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And it is different, because you sort of go back in time to a time in your life when you were still kind of adolescent. And yeah, And it's just a different feeling. So
It is.
when you were talking about that, though, my mind went back to that first meeting of James Darren and went, oh yeah, you know,
I met
that's a
him
whole
once. I don't remember if, I don't know if you remember this, but you had come to, it was a convention that was nearby, maybe, I can't remember. Anyway, I had gone to help you, to be an assistant, and James Darren was there signing, and you sent me to get a couple of things signed for the fan club. And I did not have a teenage crush on James Darren, but that man has got charisma to burn. I got in front of him and I was like,
was that in Tulsa? Does that
it might have been in Tulsa, yeah.
That big, yeah. I remember that. Yeah. Crazy.
I'm pretty sure it was, because I think it was the same one where I was standing in a line and John Delancey needed to cut the line, and the person that he was trying to, to say, hey, can I cut in front of you, was completely oblivious, was not paying attention at all. And I was like, hey, John Delancey needs to get past. Can you move? They were like, oh my God. But yeah, James Darren, he was one that I kind of freaked out about, which is unexpected.
Well, he's a charmer too. Yeah. But I mean, yeah.
And he handled it beautifully. He did. Yeah. I said,
flashbacks to age 15.
Things signed. I need two.
Yeah.
That's all I said. I held whatever it was. I think it might have been a CD. I'm not sure. But I held the two things out and I said, I need two. And so he grabbed both of my hands and kissed both of my hands instead.
Oh, that's so cute. Yeah, he's a very nice man. Yeah.
It was
absolutely. But the Time Tunnel. If anybody remembers the Time Tunnel, that was the show when I was a teenager. So
that he was on. Yeah.
Pretty fun.
Yeah. My other major starstruck moment is another James Frayne, who was in, oh gosh, what's the name of that movie with Natalie Portman and she gives birth in a Walmart? And he's the love interest in that.
Where the Heart Is.
Yes, Where the Heart Is.
My college roommate watched nothing but that show, and deep impact all our freshman year of college.
I watched Where the Heart Is over and over and over. I loved it so much. And I was at an NBC party at Comic-Con for press when he was doing, it was the superhero show that only lasted a season, The Cape. Anyway, and he came in, and I mean, I was old hat at interviewing celebrities by now. This was not a big deal. I was surrounded by famous people, and he comes in, and I kid you not, I completely freaked. I'm shaking. My friend Liz was with me, and she's just busting up. She's like, I cannot believe you're having this reaction. I'm like, I don't know what to do. She's like, did you want to go talk to him? No way. But we did. She finally dragged me over there it took like 10 minutes for me to calm down enough to go over and talk to him. And she talked to him first, bless her heart. They talked about coffee. And then I don't even remember what I said. No recollection. There is a photo as evidence that we did meet him. We were the only ones who got a photo before the publicist came and said, no more photos. I'm like, well, then why is he at a press party? But anyway, I got to interview James like a year later for True Blood, and that went much better. But that first time, it was just, I completely flipped out. Yeah, so I can relate. Yeah, but it's so rare. It's so rare that I was and I was like, what in the world, of all the people, why is it James Frayne? I mean, he's lovely. He's absolutely lovely. But then I realized, oh, I was right back in that Walmart with Natalie Portman. So yeah. That was super long, Rose. Did that answer your question at all?
Yeah, I mean, I got the gist is treat them like people, which I already try to do, and it gets easier over time.
It does, yeah. And just, you got to go into it with a mindset that I'm not here, I admire your work, but it's not, I recognize that it's work.
Now, Jenna, I think, did you have a question?
I have a pair.
Oh.
So first one is for Mel, second one is for all three of you, and I will just ask them at the same time so that we can rabbit trail whichever direction. Mel, I know that this is not your job. This is not your job. And you mentioned, you know, this is a hobby and it is one piece of your life. And so my question to you is about how you set the boundaries for yourself, because there's always more work to be done of anything, right? But especially something with this, which is so much wet cat herding. Mostly the Sid being the wet cat, but like there's so much that can be done that I'm curious as to how you say, nope, today I am done with this, or tomorrow I will not do whatever, or, you know, like how you sort of coach yourself into that. For all three of you, there's so much female energy in fandom, and it is so underrated so often. So given that the three of you, especially in this particular thing of following a male actor, I'm curious how you understand the relationship between being fan organizers and that versus or alongside being fan organizers with like Nana or a female personality or something like that.
Oh, interesting. I think, Gayle, do you want to take a stab at that one first?
Sure. I don't think for me it's ever been that big of a difference, because just like there are women who are all gaga over Sid as far as him being attractive or whatever. I mean, I immediately think of the Chase Masterson fan club, which is about as intense about her as I've ever seen. So, I mean, the guys can kind of go a little crazy just as much as the women. And early on in DS9 fandom, actually one of the most intense groups of fans I encountered were the Nana Visitor fans, 75% of whom were gay and who had a romantic attraction to her. And that was pretty obvious early on. So I guess I've just seen that dynamic in enough of the different, I mean, in my pop star fandom days, I did a lot of work with Madonna fans and Janet Jackson fans, and it is a different kind of intensity. There's no doubt about it, but I think it's, it has the potential to be equally intense. And I mean, I guess I really liked the fan groups that were equally men and women, and the ones that I encountered that were more equal were, I mean, Armin had equal numbers of men and women in his fan group. Renee had not quite equal, but a lot of men. I mean, his probably ran about 70-30 maybe. But I knew that Sid had become more mainstream as a character in DS9 when the fan club started attracting men, because early on it had been mostly women. And the day when it started to be more and more men, I felt like, okay, now this is appreciation for his acting and his character. It isn't just a bunch of gaga women with crushes, you know, which it can be. I've seen the same thing in Josh Groban fandom, where you've got some people who are just all about how dreamy he is, and then another big bunch of people, men and women, who are just really interested in his talent. And when I do my thing in a few weeks, I'm going to talk about those different categories of fans and how they're really very, very different. So that there'll be more about that, but I don't know if I answered it or not, but you take a stab at it.
Does Joan want to talk about that?
I'm not quite sure how to answer the question, but I did want to add to something that Gayle said, and I think that what we noticed as far as membership went is that the Sid's fan club was mostly women, and what Gayle and I were most proud of is, even though it was mostly women, how absolutely diverse it was. That we had people from all ethnic groups, we had people from all parts of the world, all cultures, all religions, you know, just everybody. But one thing, and I think Gayle and I discussed this at the time, at least to the best of my memory we did, that we did start getting some more men following our man Bashir. And our guess was that the male fans found Bashir more relatable once he had adopted that role in the show. So I don't know if that helps you, Janaba. Go ahead and give me another question if I haven't answered it.
Thank you. Well, both of those are really interesting routes, because it's one of those things that, especially in the Star Trek fandom, there is such a narrative, especially now, there is such a narrative of the gatekeeping of genders and who is able to be a Star Trek fan. And Sid being Sid is so very uncomfortable as a sex symbol of any sort. So given that all three of you have been attached to this for so long and have been able to sort of watch that develop, I'm just curious about how you have experienced being the power behind the throne, as it were, while the fandom has shifted into this, into constantly re-understanding itself, I guess.
Well, I had so much experience in fandom by the time Sid's fan club started, is that it's sort of came naturally, because I had such a wide experience with fans. As I mentioned in my previous social club talk, at the time in the 70s, science fiction fandom was mainly men, and Star Trek fandom was mainly women. So I had experience with both, dealing with a group that was mostly men, and being one of the few women. And then I had a experience where there was mostly women and just a few men. So I guess I didn't find it a huge transition. There were some incidences like some of the ones that Mel has said, that there were some fans that we felt that we needed to keep an eye on, but they were very, very few, very, very few. The vast majority of fans in the club were just wonderful people, just like the social club is, just wonderful people. So I had a lot of fun with it.
I would just chime in that the other fandom I've had a lot of experience with, the Josh Groban fandom, I would say the same thing, that the largest percentage of the fans were normal people who, I mean, whether they thought he was cute or not, they appreciated his talent. And I think that, the focus of the fandom being on the person's talent rather than on them as a person, and that romantic attraction that one can feel. And it's very difficult. I remember early on, Sid and I having a conversation where we were talking about another Star Trek actor who was dating fans. I won't name a name, but and he said he would never date a fan because fans thought he was Julian Bashir and not. They were in love with Julian and not with Siddig. And I think that's something that's really hard when you're a fan of someone who's playing a fictional character, to be able to separate out the character from the actor is a whole big part of that kind of attraction. And so, I whereas in the Josh Groban fandom, Josh Groban is just himself. He isn't playing a character. So, it's maybe a little bit less difficult to separate that out. But yeah, I definitely think I would tend to forget about it, because I mentioned before, Sid's like an extra younger brother I've got. And, and then people would say, oh, don't you just think he's so dreamy? And I'd kind of look at him like, huh, well, okay. I'd have to really think about where they were coming from with that. It's not something that would automatically occur to me, I guess is what I'm saying. So probably it has a lot to do with what drives one's own fandom. And I think Joan and I are alike in that we're appreciative. I mean, we have a tremendously talented group of actors in all of Star Trek, not just Deep Space Nine. And the quality of the acting is just so superb. And, I've already said I came to Star Trek as a researcher, but as I came to appreciate the show, that was one of the things that I was really struck by, was the really superb quality of the acting. So anyway, I don't know if I added anything there, but your turn, Mel.
Well, I've been trying to think about experiences with fandom that is focused on a female celebrity, and I have a little bit of experience, but not a lot with that. I did run Nana's official fan site for a few years at her request, but it ended up going away because of that group of fans who were so intense, and they had a fan site that they had started before Nana asked me to run one, and it was not well received. I was stepping on their toes. I was, invading their territory. There was a lot of there was just a lot of drama around it, and I didn't really. I didn't connect with Nana in the same way that they were, and I just couldn't quite get my arms around it, and I couldn't quite get my arms around that fandom, and so eventually I just, I said, hey, I think maybe you need to make this other site the official, and I don't think she ever did, but I said I'm not really getting any traction here, and it's not being well received, so I think that needs to go by the wayside. So, and then, just a couple of other fandoms that I've been peripherally involved with has been a lot of, it's been mostly men in that fandom, and it's been overtly sexual, and I am not comfortable with that. I don't want to be a part of that. Whether I'm participating or not in that kind of conversation, I don't want to be affiliated with a group where that's the norm. Because in my opinion, you reserve that for somebody that you A, know in real life, and B, actually have a relationship with. So it just creeps me out when people do that to people that they don't actually know. So I don't have a lot of experience in a fandom that is more is about a female celebrity and has made more of a vocally male demographic. I will say I was just looking up the analytics for SidCity.net for the last year, and as far as visitors to the website go, it's 60-40 male. 60% male, 40% female. So, your other question was balancing things?
Boundaries. How do you set them?
Setting boundaries, yes. So the very first thing that my therapist talked to me about when I started going was boundaries. Setting boundaries in all aspects of my life, because I am a born nurturer, and I am made to be a support person. That is what I find fulfilling. I'm good at it, and it's what I like. I enjoyed that role. And it had gotten out of control in a lot of areas of my life. My family was not thrilled when I started setting boundaries, but here we are. I'm in a much better place, and they all survived. So boundaries are very important, and I've had to work pretty hard to learn how to set them, and what's healthy for me, and balance that with what is needed. I do have I try not to do anything related. This past year, I had to set some boundaries for myself to not work on anything social club or SidCity related on Thursdays or on the weekends. That was the rule. I wasn't always able to adhere to that just because of things that, were going on. But, good is better than perfect. So it was good enough. So that's what I had to do. There are times though, when a situation just jumps right over a boundary, and you know, and there are just different tools that I have to use for that. I've got people that I can talk to. I've had to call Gayle in the past and talk through an issue and get her perspective on it. There are times with the person that I mentioned earlier who we had to blacklist essentially. That was after multiple conversations with my support team. I talked to my own therapist. I talked to a behavioral psychologist, and they, you know, were trying to help me figure out how to make this work. And then eventually they said, you know what, this is the boundary. This is it. It's over. So it's different for everybody. But really what it is what is healthy for me. Am I getting enough sleep? Because my anxiety, that's the first thing to go, is my sleep. Planning Sid's birthday, I'll tell you what, I lost a lot of sleep over that one, trying to get that organized. But sleep, am I eating? Am I moving? Am I getting some movement in my day? Am I able to focus? Am I able to do the work that I actually get paid for, so that I can, you know, pay the hosting fees? Is for the website, are the things that matter to me all being served? And if something's out of balance, and it's not just with the social club, there are times, or with SidCity, I mean, there have been times when something else has become so consuming in my life that I have not updated the site as regularly as I could have, because I would say, oh, you know what, I'll get to that. I've got to put this aside for right now. I've got to put this aside for right now. So you just really have to find that balance. And I'm somebody who's always doing a lot of different things, and finding balance is my perpetual quest. I never feel like I've got it, but I keep trying.
We can all try and get sleep, as much sleep as possible. This whole having international friends thing, it's really
I know. And now, yeah, we've got, now Sid's in Australia, so if I need to talk to him about something in real time, there's math involved. Yeah.
well. Are there any other questions for Mel, for Joan Marie, for Gayle, for anybody? I think we have time for a couple more.
We answered all the questions. Yay!
Yay! There's nothing more to talk about. We've reached.
Mel, I had
the
a
end.
comment, just quickly. It's something I thought of, if that's okay.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. I did want to say, Mel, like, I've always been really impressed at how well you wrangle this group, because I remember when I first heard about this, like, getting to talk directly to a Star Trek actor on Zoom, I'm like, I wanted to get in on it quickly because I felt like it was going to go away, because there was going to be somebody be creepy or some horrible drama that would erupt that would end it. And so, like, I'm really impressed at the way that you've prevented that from happening and the way that you've steered this club. So I just wanted to say thank you for that.
Oh, thanks. Hi, Mo. That's Sid and I talked it through before that first meeting. We talked about, if this happens, what do we do? If this happens, what do we do? And he said, you know, I think, you know, people will get it very quickly. But that's why there are rules for the social club. No matter what he says, there are rules that were carefully designed and put out there before the first one. So it's, you know, it was a collaborative effort, and really SidCity is a collaborative effort in the sense that he has a lot of input as far as, you know, different things that we do. And the social club was very much this is what I want it to be. This is the mission. And I said, yeah, we can make that happen. We can do this. So if he didn't want to do it, we wouldn't be doing it, but it was collaborative. There was, well, that's another story for another day.
So anyone have some closing comments? Gayle, Joan, Mel?
Would it be all right if I mentioned that if listeners want to know more about the early days of Star Trek fandom, that I can mention that I have a book called Boldly Writing.
Of course.
Okay.
Please do. So
And-
give us all the details.
Yes, Boldly Writing is available both in ebook and paperback, and now hardback too form. And it's a chronology. Yes, there it is, Janaba. Yes. And it covers 1967 to 1987. So if you want to know more about the history of fandom, I've got it written down.
That is fantastic. Thank you. And so you've got a book. Gayle, you have a textbook coming out. And
She also has some other publications that
that's right.
that deal.
I have a website. I've posted it here before, but I wrote a book called The Psychology of Celebrity, which actually has an interview with Sid in it and some of the other Star Trek actors. It's on Amazon, Psychology of Celebrity under my name. But if you, I'll put my link to my ResearchGate in the chat box, and then anybody who wants to read all my different publications about fandom, and again, I'll be talking about that next month. I'm gonna give a kind of a wider overview on media psychology as well. There's a chapter in my textbook called Media Psychology and COVID-19, where we explored some of the ways that the two, COVID and media, have intersected. And as a matter of fact, I think I mentioned SidCity Social Club in there. I'm sure I did. But a lot of other stuff as well that was, you know, the connection between media and COVID. But yeah, it's there's quite a bit there. So I'm gonna have to sign off. My husband's coming in here with dinner, so we're having Mother's Day dinner tonight. So, but thanks to everybody. It's been really great.
Thank you so much for coming.
No problem.
And thank you so much for your
Always
time.
enjoyable to be with all of you fine people. Several of my long friends, not only Melissa and Joan, but Kathy Wang and Mary Nazinski, and quite a few other friends of many years. So it's always fun. So anyway, thanks so much.
Well,
Yes, and
thank you for being here.
Thanks,
Morgan
Gayle.
says thanks.
I don't have a book yet, but actually Sid and I were talking about that last night. We were well, last night for me, midday for him, but you know, just kind of talking about.
Got a quarantine jail yet, or?
He, not yet. 3 more days. 3 more
Oh,
days.
wow.
Yeah. But
I'm balls on that. Yeah.
just talking about how odd it was not to be producing a show on a Friday afternoon, and you know, just and somebody
Yep.
should write a book. Yeah, you Mel, you should write the book. Okay, well, maybe we'll see. We'll see. So anyway, no books yet. No books yet.
But you know, she runs this website. I'm not sure if anyone's heard it. SidCity.net.
There's a lot of stuff there. There's plenty of material there, and there's more to come.
Yep.
I just have to get people to sign off on it.
Thanks for inviting us, Casey. It's been a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time. And this has been amazing. I'm going to say thank you again. And thank you everyone for coming. And I'm going to say bye-bye. See you around the internet.
Bye. Bye.